And if that is one of your KPIs, is to really increase the engagement level with a specific audience, incredible. VR is amazing for that. And I've seen so many use cases for it in that space, and that's where I also get really excited. Some of the immersive storytelling in there that I've seen, I've gasped and cried.
What was your first experience putting on a VR headset?
I remember doing some, VR's had a bumpy road, right? It's tried to come and be our friend a few times, and everyone's like, no, not really, too soon. And I find that really interesting, where it's been around for a long time, and it kind of has come up and then it's gone away, and then it's come up and it's gone away.
Versus and valleys.
Yeah. But the whole thing really has been about, enough people having the hardware for it to be scalable and for it to catch on, and that just wasn't possible in the early days. But some of the early things I've experienced, with the classic roller coaster rides, where I was like, I'm actually going to throw up, and I'm kind of, I'm surprised I'm feeling like this, versus more in-depth storytelling. Like there's some incredible stuff that is out there that can take me on a story, and I've shut out the world, and I'm just with the story and this character, and I'm there. But I also remember the first time I got a huger sense of joy, and this is really important because you've got the one-on-one experiences in VR, but now the beauty of community. And that's the turning point for me. So I will never forget, gives me goosebumps now, which is great, I'm such a geek. When I
That's all right, me too, all the listeners for this, that's what we're here for.
When my whole last few years at Meta was working on Horizon Worlds. So my role was to truly unpack what is the creative opportunity for brands and how can they collaborate in this space, and then run exploration teams doing just that. When I first entered the space, I wanted to do a few things, and I put the headset on, and I was going in and I was meeting people in the community, but to see another avatar kind of directly in front of me, engaging with me, smiling at me, hearts coming out of their hands, having this crazy full-on two-person embodied experience, that blew my mind. I was like, I've done gaming and stuff before, but to be truly like feeling like I'm in a space, and to be traveling to different worlds within that space, and to be laughing, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And as I'd go and onboard executive teams and onboard bigger brands outside of Meta on the daily, and that moment of joy was never lost on those executives too. They could have the highest job in the world with the most stress, put them in a boardroom, put all of them in a headset and get them to meet each other as their avatars for the first time. Everyone is children, 5 years old for the first 30 minutes. There is no serious talk that is happening. Everyone resorts back to being a child and just having pure joy, fun, and in hysterics. That is the best, absolute best.
Welcome back to another episode of Meta Rick, where we talk with creatives and technologists that are evangelizing the metaverse, XR, Web3 and blockchain technologies, artificial intelligence. Today we've got an amazing guest with Kaz Maurice O'Leary. I'm realizing I didn't ask you. I hope I pronounced that right.
Perfect.
But I've seen Kaz pop up more and more on LinkedIn in the last couple of years, and I noticed that you spoke at South by Southwest talking about VR and AR for good, and you've got this long background as a creative director in big agencies, 6 years at Meta, and then now you founded or are a founding member of Versus and Valleys, a technology advisory council, helping kind of fill that skill and knowledge gap around these technologies for Silicon Valley. So obviously an amazing kind of career so far. I'd love to start by learning a little more about Versus and Valleys and what you're up to today, and then we can kind of go from there.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Versus and Valleys, we launched as a team earlier this year, and it really came out of this crazy, interesting time we have in the technology space, where there are so many layoffs happening, and the talent that is out there is unbelievable. And we were just kind of sitting back going, with all this talent at large and available in one time, we need to come together and really create an advisory council and use our time wisely, use these brains wisely, and really try and get some help to corners of the industry that haven't had access to an entire technology team with the experiences on Versus and Valleys before. So we did just that. We kicked off earlier this year, and what we did for season 1, we just launched season 2. Season 1 is you've got 7 of us all coming together. Our unique difference is, and it was really important to us, is that we have in the same room at the same time right at the start to help people is legal, creative, production, and business development. And so that's a complete flip on an agency structure or anything. Like, we come in right at the beginning with all those brains in there, and our role is to be an advisory council to anyone who is looking at creating their emerging technology strategy. They may have a project that they're on now and they've reached a crossroad and they just really need a tailored session with all these brains in one room. They may be mapping out the next 12 months or 24 months and want some really responsible guidance on what way to go, what to plan for, what are timeframes, budgets, other pieces of technology to consider to reach your goals. Like, really asking you, what is your business strategy and where does emerging technology fit into that? In season 1, we decided to really go out and go pro bono, and we worked globally with startups and businesses through Australia, North America, and the UK, and just learnt a ton of things and met some exceptional brains. God, there's some incredible people out there. And we just all had a really good time making prototypes and strategies, and that's where our strength is. We are incubator sprinters by heart. We know how to go to market. The brains on our team are all coming from Silicon Valley, go to market brains, emerging technology platforms. So we've moved into season 2, and we've just kicked off, oh my God, it's July, last month. And we are full steam ahead now into a paid consulting model for anyone who needs that type of high level input right at the start. And we can kind of connect to creators and production houses and just really help people get going in the right way.
Amazing. I think that's so important right now, because almost every company in the world is going to benefit from these technologies. And not just every company, but also each department within the company has different use cases, right? Like, if you're talking about HR versus sales use cases versus marketing versus product development, they all have kind of a different need of what they're going to use this stuff for. And it's so different for a car company than it is for like a Salesforce or an IT company. So having people that have talked to hundreds or thousands of these projects and how they work is super valuable. When you say season 1, season 2, what do you mean by that?
We wanted to take a really different approach because technology is moving so fast. We didn't want to just launch with a structure that was stagnant or could age quite quickly. So we decided, let's go out in seasons. Let's have season 1, and we have particular offerings and areas of technology that we really lean into. And then we take all those learnings and go into the next season. Okay, what does the industry really need for season 2? Where are the areas of need? Where are the areas that are unpacking the fastest at the moment and people need additional support? So coming out as seasons as a council just really felt like the most nimble and reactive way to be in the industry right now.
That is so interesting. I think it's cool because like people like to be a part of a story as it's happening too. And like even looking back to my days at Snapwire, when super early I was the first sales hire, it was like 5 of us in a little co-working space, and then we eventually got our own office and we went from 5 people to 45 people and kind of went on this journey. And we'll always talk about like the day that we built all of our own desks or we brought a pizza in, and like all those classic startup stories become a piece of the company culture over time. Yeah. And so by breaking it up in seasons, I feel like it gives you these very specific like eras of the council that you can look back on and write content about, or like use it as like almost a historic memory of where the innovation has come from. That's really cool.
I love that. I love that approach of revising it as a story. That's very clever. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also gives you a lot of breadth to learn, right? So you guys did a lot of pro bono work the first time, and you mentioned it was a breadth of a variety of different companies, from startups to big, large businesses. How did you come across and like find these customers? Was it word of mouth? Did they come to you? Like how did you kind of start going into the market?
Yeah, we launched on LinkedIn. And the response there was incredible because it's the perfect mix of startups and founders and people just really hungry. And it was the place where everyone was with all the redundancies going on. You know, it was this live feed of what's going on in the world. Plus, our team is so connected to so many different areas of the industry and globally. As soon as they found out, as soon as their own networks found out that this team had come together, a lot of really strong leads came through the members that are on the council as well. And then we also had some incredible support that really helped us go out for season 1 and launch 1. So New York festivals, advertising festival. Scott Rose over there, who's the president, was a huge help. He really pushed us out, which we're extremely thankful for. And then also we got a lot of leads in through Tom Fisk's weekly newsletter that he does as well through LinkedIn, which is fantastic, by the way. If anyone wants to sign up for that. Yeah.
Shout out Immersive Wire. Yeah, Tom Fisk.
So good. Yeah.
Great content. I loved his breakdown on the Vision Pro. I think he did one of the most thoughtful kind of recaps of it that week. But yeah, Tom Fisk is amazing. Everybody should go look him up and subscribe to the Immersive Wire. Coming out of that first season, what were some of the biggest takeaways that you had of maybe some things that surprised you or some things that affirmed what you knew? Because you've been around XR and AR for a little longer than I think most folks have been. So I'm curious if there's anything that's like, yeah, we were talking about this 6 years ago and now it's just real, or if there's anything that was like totally blindsided you that you were very surprised by.
Because I've come from a long time working in big tech, so working at Meta, I was dealing, a lot with big brands directly, and so you get a whole lot of learnings in that space. The really interesting thing, stepping out of that and going globally and just kind of putting this out there to see where it could land, was the amount of incredible startups and founders that really needed some assistance in pure creative strategy around emerging technology. So that I didn't know existed as far as a pocket, and it's really meaningful and satisfying. And when I say what that pocket was, it's these incredible brains who are doing amazing startups. God, they are so smart. Their ideas are changing the world, but they are so close to it that they haven't had a chance to step back and really work out their go-to-market messaging to make this thing scale and to make this thing fly. And we found ourselves in that space a lot, which comes naturally to everyone on the entire team. And we're like, oh, wow, this is a real need. And it felt really good to be able to help in that space. And so 50% of our work was that. We would sit with these founders, we would absorb all their passion and all the incredible work they've done to get the company where it is now. And we can very clearly see what are the go-to-market areas that they probably haven't articulated perfectly, that could land on the human value that the market needs to know and can help them get more funding. And so we helped one particular company with their key go-to-market messages, and then it really helped them get another 50% funding from VCs, because they could clearly articulate what the value was, how they're going to go to market, how they're going to speak, and it just levitated everything for them, which is incredible.
I love that. That's a big reason why I'm actually even doing this podcast and talking to folks like you, is that I think there's a lot of people on the creative production side giving advice on how to learn Unreal and learn Unity and start building out 3D models. There's a lot of folks that are dabbling with NFTs and like how do you create a game using blockchain, and like people that are kind of on the delivery side of a lot of these projects. But I think there's a lack of folks talking about the marketing and the sales and like how do you actually sell a metaverse activation? How do you build a structure where someone can say yes and actually buy it? And that's something that I think there's a huge lack of knowledge on, because we're so early where it's all builders right now, and there's not a lot of that kind of go-to-market skill set. For Versus and Valleys, are you guys focused on metaverse and XR technology? Do you dabble with Web3 and blockchain? Like, what's the main kind of area of focus for you guys?
We go full landscape, hence the Valley and Versus. So we go full landscape. There are skills on our team to kind of cover everything in that space, and then we know how to pull in specialist areas if we're going to go completely granular on things. But full landscape for a few reasons. One, it depends what the company's coming in with. So we're really responsible and highly creative. So those two things are usually unusual together, but we come in with both. And where we kind of really want to go with that is there may be a combination of technology that is needed. So a client may come in and they're really fixated on AI or our VR or just AR, but it's like, let's just take a huge step back and understand what your business goals are, what is your impact, what is the longevity of this, what is the full plan, and what investment do you want to make. Then let's make some decisions on what combination of technology is truly going to work for you. Because if you're coming in and you're wanting to build a virtual world, you've got a certain budget, but you might not have factored into you're going to own this world and the maintenance of this world, and you're going to be driving the traffic and making a campaign of awareness outside of that. Sometimes that can make people's heads just blow, just that information in a meeting. They're like, but you know, understanding what they want to make and being realistic about the time frame, and you need to know all the pieces of technology. So that's why we put it all on the table. We're constantly looking at everything and then bringing together the right stack for that particular client.
That's such a good answer, because I feel like as an advisor, like our job is to essentially have a mastery over the tools. I'm kind of stealing this from Mo Husseini at Gen City Labs. I think he does a good job of articulating it. But basically, like, you need to be a master of all this stuff. That's the whole reason they're coming to you as an advisor. And then based on their business need and their problem, you can bring out the right tool to solve that problem. Like, does digital ownership and blockchain become a vital piece of this metaverse, or do you not need that and you can really focus on more of a Web 2 browser-based kind of simpler experience? It just depends on the business need. And I'm wondering, so that's a big debate right now, right? Is like with XR, it's like the interface and like the engagement side. I think Nick Metham from Metaverse said 99% of all metaverses are still in Web 2, and 99% of them are mostly web-based, not so much in a headset. And so I'm wondering what your take is on the importance of blockchain in the metaverse and like digital ownership, and then after that, maybe the value of a headset versus a browser-based experience.
God, there's so much to unpack.
Yeah, let's maybe one at a time. Maybe we start with the blockchain one.
Okay. I have just completed an MIT study in blockchain innovation. So my head is so in the space on the value of it, and it is crucial in this metaverse space for, gosh, so many reasons, and I had so many aha moments while I was studying, like this, like the ease and exchange of virtual objects in the space. Like we need to, blockchain really does offer this ease of being able to trade things and buy things and move, and things to eventually move around. But I feel that it has got a little bit of a hard hit from things like NFTs. But here's the thing, right? NFTs is not just art, but yet because it was our first experience of the NFT technology, everyone has only, I've had this conversation all the time, they're like, oh no, NFTs, and it's like, no, you're looking at it and analysing it from just the art execution that you've experienced this huge flurry of, not the piece of technology itself. And there are so many things that can be built on that piece of technology. You're seeing a lot happening in the real estate space, and the way to connect, I get super excited about how to connect virtual things to real world things. I think those two combinations are for me where I feel the most comfortable really pushing the boundary, because it makes sense. I spend a lot of time in my headset, but I need physical things, And I know that also works really well for a brand, because a majority of them have physical things, whether it's bricks and mortar or a physical product. So blockchain, there is so much in that space that allows those two things to come together. I also think that it is vitally important for identity verification. And I get quite passionate about this space too, because, man, we're moving so fast into these virtual worlds with some of us have many different representations of our avatar. Awesome. Self-expression, the highest it's ever been. Like you can go out and be, I don't know, a giant pumpkin tomorrow, or I can turn up as a complete... Your options of expression are limitless as an avatar, which is great. This also does open up a huge opportunity for bad players and people pretending they are someone when they're not. Like, because there are so many combinations and so many different virtual... Yeah, it's a huge problem. We're already seeing it in Horizon Worlds, where a lot of really young kids have their parents' headsets on. And so there's huge complications with that to even consider. But ways that we can now, and this is what I did my blockchain study on. I had to do an assignment at the end, and I landed. If anyone wants to work on this, it's a huge problem to tackle. But how do we use blockchain for true identity verification for avatars? How can we? I came up with this idea called Avastar, which is just a concept, just mucking around. But it was, there's so many jobs in the metaverse space as an avatar. So my time in virtual worlds, we've hired singers and comedians and hosts and actors, and that's incredible. I was like, there are so many jobs available for people who can work from home and genuinely make an income. And I think that space is incredible because it gives people accessibility, and that's what technology should do. But how do we verify them? So how can we make sure that we are like truly using blockchain technology to verify that avatar? Usually you need to go through an intermediary that can verify your qualifications, but blockchain can be used for that. But what are all the ways that we could create a place where no matter where your avatar is going, it is verified, it is you can get a job, you can turn up and be a host, and we are creating some income in this space and really raising the economy for people in this space. So I think that's a huge area. And then I know I'm talking a lot. So
let's pause on this because I think you just opened up a really interesting and important use case for blockchain. Right? Is like, I think we all get excited when we're on the cutting edge of something. It's easy to get stuck in an echo chamber of everybody kind of talking about it, and that's why we create these bubbles of hype, right? And that's why things like the NFT movement of the last couple of years, with all these projects just becoming generative 10,000 PFP projects on OpenSea or whatever. But in reality, what is a non-fungible token? It's a line in a ledger sitting on the chain and on a crypto. I'm gonna sound so dumb right now because I'm fumbling words. But essentially, it's a non-fungible line on a ledger, right? It's a set of digits that basically says that this is the one thing you have. It has nothing to do with the JPEG. It has nothing to do with the actual asset. That JPEG a lot of the time is actually hosted on a centralized server. That if it goes down, you're still gonna lose the art, but you still have that token. It's almost like if someone signed a picture of a celebrity. And like you have that signature now, like that's the one thing that you have. The picture, the actual piece of paper matters a lot less than that signature. So I love that you're kind of refocusing the value where it's not just on art or a visual asset. It's actually about that technology. So things like automotive or luxury goods where you want to have like a certification of the quality of that item and the ownership of that item. And you want that stored in a way where you have full ownership over that paperwork. It's not in a centralized server. It's kind of like if you think way back before the internet, like we still do this today with our birth certificates, right? And our social security cards. We hold those as pieces of paper in a box somewhere.
Yeah.
That social security card can't get laminated. If you light it on fire, that's a problem. Like if it gets ripped, that's a problem. The blockchain is a potential solution for things like that, where you can actually store similar kind of paperwork of importance in a way that you still have full control of it.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to identity, I think that's a huge thing. I know Apple is talking about age verification in Apple wallets and that being kind of moving more and more into this digital identity. People are pretending to be companies on Twitter and it's affecting stock prices, right? Like we see a lot of deep fakes happening where people are making celebrities say things they didn't really say. So having some kind of an underlying identity verification so we know who actually is the person that's saying this, who is the person attaching their name to this. I can see there being a lot of value in that particular area for blockchain. Yeah. Now, kind of because I think we could talk about that for another hour in itself, but let's pivot over to the headset versus browser-based experiences. So when it comes to browser-based, there's a lot of accessibility. When it comes to headset, I think we still have a bit of a lack of traction. Like not everybody has a headset, let alone has even used one. Where do you see a use case being really valuable for an in-headset experience versus sticking to a browser-based?
Yeah, well, again, a lot of criteria and things to ask as you're about to go down this path. So If you are looking for me, this is the process I go through if someone comes in. A VR experience, incredible, undivided attention, storytelling through the roof, emotion through the roof. Like you truly leave feeling something. We can all remember when we first put on that headset and something moved us. Like you just get goosebumps over your entire body. And if that is what a brand is going for and they are okay with it not being this highly scalable execution, it's more important for them to have this one-on-one with a person the time spent with a brand in a headset is huge. And if that is one of your KPIs, is to really increase the engagement level with a specific audience, incredible. VR is amazing for that, and I've seen so many use cases for it in that space, and that's where I also get truly excited. Some of the immersive storytelling in there that I've seen, I've gasped and cried.
What was your first experience putting on a VR headset?
I remember doing some VR's had a bumpy road, right? It's tried to come and be our friend a few times and everyone's like, no, not ready, too soon. And I find that really interesting where it's been around for a long time and it kind of has come up and then it's gone away and then it's come up and it's gone away.
Verses and valleys.
Yeah. But the whole thing really has been about, enough people having the hardware for it to be scalable and for it to catch on, and that just wasn't possible in the early days. But some of the early things I've experienced, with the classic roller coaster rides where I was like, I'm actually going to throw up, and I'm kind of, I'm surprised I'm feeling like this, versus more in-depth storytelling, like there's some incredible stuff that is out there that can take me on a story, and I've shut out the world and I'm just with the story and this character and I'm there. But I also remember the first time I got a huge sense of joy, and this is really important because you've got the one-on-one experiences in VR, but now the beauty of community. And that's the turning point for me. So I will never forget, gives me goosebumps now, which is great, I'm such a geek. Me
too, all the listeners for this, that's what we're here for.
When my whole last few years at Meta was working on Horizon Worlds. So my role was to truly unpack what is the creative opportunity for brands and how can they collaborate in this space, and run exploration teams doing just that. When I first entered the space, I wanted to do a few things, and I put the headset on and I was going in and I was meeting people in the community, but to see another avatar kind of directly in front of me, engaging with me, smiling at me, hearts coming out of their hands, having this crazy full-on two-person embodied experience, that blew my mind. I was like, I've done gaming and stuff before, but to be truly feeling like I'm in a space, and to be traveling to different worlds within that space, and to be laughing and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And as I'd go and onboard executive teams and onboard bigger brands outside of Meta on the daily, and that moment of joy was never lost on those executives too. They could have the highest job in the world with the most stress, put them in a boardroom, put all of them in a headset and get them to meet each other as their avatars for the first time. Everyone is children, 5 years old for the first 30 minutes. There is no serious talk that is happening. Everyone resorts back to being a child and just having pure joy, fun, and in hysterics. That is the best. Absolute best.
And what's crazy is HR teams set aside budgets of millions of dollars to try and do the stereotypical joke of avocado toast and pizza parties and things like that, to try and accomplish that goal, to try and create this social connectivity, this cultural kind of morale boost, which we do value. We literally spend millions of dollars for big companies to be able to try and maintain that. Yeah. And then to your point with a VR headset, when you're doing it in niche groups, it's hard to do for 10,000 employees all at the same time. But when you're doing it for these hyper-focused groups of people, it happens almost on its own. You could do a pretty basic actual VR experience to start. You don't necessarily need to throw a massive budget at a crazy, fully built-out game.
Yeah.
to be able to get the point across. You could probably even use some templated things. Like I don't know about, so let's kick that back over to you. Is like when a new person comes into VR, are you finding a lot of these executives, now that it's been around for a few years of kind of the hype cycle, is it a lot of their second, third time in VR? Is it usually still that first time where they're learning how to just walk again almost? Or what's your experience been like with these executives hopping in there?
It's all different. Every day I find that the level of experience is completely different. So you've just got to be ready to adapt and to see where to lean into. Most people have experienced some type of immersive video, I would say. And I still think that's a huge untapped area. And obviously Apple is capitalizing on that now. But
when you say immersive video, do you mean like a 360 video? Do you mean watching a video of immersive content? Or what do you mean by that?
I mean in headset absorbing content like anything in Oculus TV and also what Apple's leaning into now. So that could be a combination of things. That could be 360. It could be there's some beautiful documentaries that are made. That there's a lot of work in there that has picked up Emmys because I really do believe it's an untouched space. It could be a documentary that is bringing into play all of those things. So 360, 180, microscopic, drone, like all of those amazing camera tricks. Like it's gone so far from, I think when everyone probably just tried a 360 immersive video and headset, and that was wow then. Now, whew, the level of storytelling you can get. Like I broke down one the other day because I'm such a nerd, but I was like, God, I listed like all the different camera angles and features that they had used in their immersive video, and I probably came up with like 10 different things. Like a lot of that list that I've just spilled off, but what an incredible place to start. And the great thing about playing in that space, there's a big decision that has to happen right at the beginning when you're a brand or you're a CMO and you're wanting to go into the VR space, and it is, do I want really high fidelity or am I going for full-on community and interaction? Because right now you have to make that call. And I've been in so many of these meetings where they might start off with wanting a virtual world because they're really excited about the community angle and multiple people being in one space and all the great things that come with that. But they get so hung up on the fidelity. And you can try and as much as you want, but if that team is still stuck on fidelity or like even halfway through the project, you have to make that call at the beginning. And if you want something that's the fidelity is through the roof and it's cinematic and it's stunning, then let's take a different path in VR. But let's make that right from the start.
I think that's super. Anything creative, expectation setting is such a big part of the process for a salesperson, for a producer, for anyone involved in client management. Every step of the process, you have to kind of reset expectation, remind people of kind of decisions we made in the last meeting, and like keep people on track, right? Because there's so much exciting stuff to play around with that it's easy to get distracted by like, wait a minute, but I just saw this video on LinkedIn yesterday of this Unreal example that was so perfect. It's like, well, but we decided we didn't want that because you want all these interactions and you have a budget you have to stick to and a timeline you have to stick to, right? And so you kind of have to constantly remind people. What's an example of when that visual fidelity really matters, like where the use case requires you to go all out on fidelity?
It depends on what the client is and what they really want. So if there is, obviously some brands who just can't go into the space where the fidelity isn't perfect, that's completely off brand for them. And that's the space that they're in, and there are completely different ways to deal with that, and that is okay. If you are wanting, and I know that this conversation may change in 6 months' time, but
that's season 3.
That will be season 3. There are certain things that you are trying to recreate in a social VR world or a virtual space that can't be photorealistic. That client there's non-negotiable, it has to be photorealistic. That could be a logo, that could be a certain product, and that is changing a lot because there are a lot of new things coming into the space, so that's why I say that. But those conversations are really important right at the beginning. Is like, okay, where are the non-negotiables with this? Tell us now. And then also mapping out where the no turning back points are. Like once we build it to this point, any types of changes that are this, and this mean that we have to kind of go back to the start. And keeping everyone really aware along that time frame of the milestones and where we're at. Because I've seen it before. I've even seen it in AR, which is, such a great place to start as well, where a client, we've built an incredible filter. It's doing the job that we said it would, and we get all the way to the end, and they're like, oh no, we wanted the whole thing to loop around. And I'm like, oh, well, that's going to be a completely different build. And that's fine. It's all education and helping people understand where are the no turn backs and what are the decisions you need to make at the beginning in case they do get to the end and they need to answer questions with their stakeholders. So it's about creating a journey of confidence, full transparency. Let's all learn as we go. These are the bumps that we may hit. Let's go on it together.
I think something that's so interesting about this is, we both come from creative before getting into AR, VR. For me, it was photo video production, and then moved into virtual world building. And one of the first things I noticed is that both have a creative brief, and scoping out a project and going from beginning to end, the sales cycle, the onboarding cycle is very similar. Maybe instead of a photographer, you have a Unity developer or an Unreal developer or something like that. Like the doers are different and the types of creatives are different, but the process is still a creative process. It's still that discovery and unpacking of business needs. It's still that presenting of ideas and solutions and that constant struggle of ideating all the way through till the last day and delivering that project, right? Yeah. I'm curious, in that creative process, how have you been using artificial intelligence? Have you started dabbling with like Midjourney and ChatGPT? I'm curious if that's more on your side of playing around with it, or if that's like handing it off to the client. Like, how does AI help with that creative process?
Yeah, we've been leaning into that hugely because it's been incredible for the speed of what we can respond to our clients and show, incredible references as well. So, that's like a picture's just fallen off my wall. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. So definitely for storyboarding, it's been fantastic for laying out things, for laying out references for prototypes. We've really been leaning into it for there as well, which has been great. And sometimes, or a lot of the time, because we're looking at merging different pieces of technology and landing into spaces that there's no reference for it right now, we can use generative AI to create that reference as we are prompting. We want it to be a bit of this and a bit of this, and we're going to be executing it using these types of technologies. Can you help us create some references? So incredible. I mean, if you have the right reference, that can make and sell an entire job in. And I've learned that throughout my entire career. You would know that coming back from advertising. You walk in with a killer reference for a client that makes them truly understand the direction that you are going. They are like, got it.
Well, agencies do huge lifts for this, right? And like, I'm sure you've been a part of plenty of these projects, but it's like if you're pitching a 6-figure, or really that's on the low end, like let's say you're pitching a 7-figure marketing campaign, like you might create a full-on proof of concept. Like you might spend 50 grand internally just to build out the idea so that the customer can envision what it'll look like, develop not just confidence in the idea, but trust in your team that you have a vision for it and that you're capable of delivering it. Yeah. And so I imagine AI can cut down on a lot of those internal costs. Or is it a cost thing? Is it a timeline thing? Like what do you think the biggest benefits are to using AI in that process? Or is it even just opening doors to doing stuff you just couldn't do before?
Well, I'd say all of those things. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So valuable.
So valuable. I'd say all of those things. And I know there are elements of this that make me sad, and this is obviously a huge topic as well. We used, back in the advertising day, I had my favorite storyboard artist and would work really closely for him for really big brand pictures all the time. And I can there is a certain look that these things have. So and everyone knows now when you go into a meeting if it has been created through generative AI, there's a certain tone, there's a certain look, the way things look. So I still think there is a huge need for that originality of look and feel, but it gives you a quick reference as long as you are being transparent about how you got it, where you got it from, what its intention is, and to also, if the client is new into this space, let them know that this is a reference, that this isn't exactly what the finished product will be, because that can cause some confusion. You built an entire smart city? Is that what we're doing? Amazing.
Totally. Well, I think the idea, and we were talking about this almost a little bit before hopping on, is like it helps you to go further into the process. Like instead of needing to get a storyboard artist or a designer right at the beginning, and you having to have 3 or 4 calls translating and playing telephone with them back and forth to the client, you can take it much further with the client with less of those resources, with less of that back and forth to keep less cooks in the kitchen. And then once it's more developed and maybe you've got your idea or a couple of ideas honed in, then you can bring those experts, those specialists to come master it for you, to come like take it across the finish line to where it needs to be.
Exactly.
So do you find that you're passing on, because this is something that I have been surprised by, is like at first I thought that the AI would be something that clients can just like start coming up with sample imagery on their own and putting in prompts, and like they could dabble with almost creating more robust briefs to then pass off to a team. But the more creatives I talk to, I'm finding a lot of the time clients struggle even with the prompts on that side, and they need help with that. So do you see the AI piece being owned more by the agency or the creative, or do you think clients will eventually start kind of creating their own briefs using AI and taking it further before even finding an agency?
Depends on the client.
Okay.
Like it really does. I've worked with clients who want to be involved in that entire process. Like even in Horizon Worlds, they're in the world with the creators as they are building. And that's one set of clients, because they're just so hungry and curious to learn about it. And then there are other clients who, they're just so busy that stopping to learn how to effectively prompt AI is just like, oh my God, I actually also need to eat and sleep. So I think it goes 2 ways depending on the client, what their level of interest is, what their level of trust of you is to do that part for them. But I also work on inform. So at every point that we are doing something, if they are not in the room as we're doing it and we catch up, I'll say, this is how we did it, this is what we did. So taking them on a full educational process at the same time, so they are really getting a whole lot of learning value out of the area that they've been brave enough to push into. I think that's really important.
Well, and is that something that's a little different also about the advisory council to a traditional agency, I would imagine? Like traditional agencies, they do give a lot of advice and strategy, but they also have a lot of stake in doing everything for the client too, right? Like that's how they make their money, is like selling more service hours and getting more people involved in doing projects. Like they're experts, they're able to deliver amazing things, but they are still businesses at the end of the day. And with the advisory council, is it almost less focused on the production delivery side and more on the advice giving, or is it more similar to an agency where you're kind of full service end to end to delivering on these projects as well?
Yeah, we're not full service. We are exactly what you were kind of outlaying at the start. We come in at the high level strategy area of kind of full landscape advice on where do you need to go and what do you need to consider. So that's the area that we are the strongest at, because of the caliber of brains that we have on the council and how we all turn up in one room. With you're in a virtual room a lot of the time, but with legal, an attorney, you've got 3 people with global creative, incredible experience in emerging technology. You've got an insane Silicon Valley development manager who's managed so many of the big partnerships of go-to-market technology, and an Emmy awarding production brain as well. So we come in with, what do you need to know at this stage, and completely download at that level, setting them up to then continue to go on to do what they need to do. We can also, because we've worked so much in the industry, the level of production house information that we have for specialised areas is huge. so we can help guide them on where to go, which again can save a company so much time and money by just knowing the right creators to go to pull off the project that they want.
Yeah, the process of vetting good vendors to trust is so tough, and with emerging tech, you really do need to be outsourcing a lot of this stuff right now, because most companies just haven't built like a full-on internal team that can deliver a AAA game level production, right?
Yeah.
There's a handful that are really ahead of the curve and like have 100 Unreal developers on staff and are really leaned into this. I find a lot of the automotive companies have leaned in earlier on than others because they have such a visual, expensive product that it's made sense for them to do that. But most companies are still really behind. And so finding a vendor who's like an expert in Roblox or like an expert in Fortnite and can build an activation in there for you, they know the lingo, they know the terminology of the type of games people play on that platform, right? Like having those niche experts and finding them quickly makes a lot of sense to me. I'm curious if you have a take on when it makes sense to outsource versus when it makes sense to start building that internal team. Like if there's a certain skill set, if someone does want to build that muscle in-house, that they should look for versus like no, just get this out, experiment with an external partner.
It depends on your team, what you have in-house, and it depends on your idea. So I've seen mistakes made in this area a few times where people have staffed up internally in a particular skill area and they are like, we're cool, we've got the team, we can do it. I'm like, great, awesome, I'll stay with you like lockstep and let's see how it goes. But their timeline is tight and they don't and we get to this interesting crossroad where the internal team may also still be honing their skills and learning, which is fantastic, but if you've got a project that needs to move at pace, you've got to be outsourcing to someone who's already spent a ton of time on this to get to the spot that you need. So if your team is fully stacked and you've got all the people and they've got all the experience, fantastic. You've got what you need to roll internally, but if you don't, you need to be really honest up front about the areas you need to specialize out, because that could cause you some real problems. I've had some emergency phone calls with some clients who have had to reverse that decision where it hasn't worked out, it's not moving as fast as they need to move it, their internal team needs some more experts alongside them, and so we quickly pull those in. But yeah, making those really responsible and honest and upfront decisions right at the start can save a project.
Yeah, so that's a part of that initial process when you're identifying the business case and kind of coming up with a vision. You also need to kind of assess, like, what is the team that we have involved in this? What are the skill sets you have available? And, like, where are the gaps? And, like, where do we need to fill those gaps? And you probably start jotting down short lists of, like, folks that you know you can bring in. Yeah. Kaz, we've gotten super tactical for most of this call, and I know we jumped right into the tactical stuff quickly, but I want to zoom out a little bit and just learn more about you. So you worked in the creative world for big agencies. Was that always AR, VR, or what was the creative experience you were working on before moving into the XR world?
Yeah, I worked in the creative industry as a junior art director, is where I all started at TBWA, and did the ladder climbing in that area. Worked for TBWA, worked for DDB, did a lot. I've always been hugely pulled, and a lot of my most successful work has been in experiences and interactivity and how to create outdoor how to have participation, whether it be a huge outdoor spectacular or whether it be an online storytelling journey. So that's always been where my brain naturally goes. After being in the advertising industry for decades, I had to make a call. I could see a lot of my friends were at ECD level, and that was naturally my next level to go to, but I could see how much they were burning out as well. And I have a huge philosophy called the Bolognese philosophy around looking after each other and not burning out in the workspace, which is a whole nother side of my life.
I just want to double click on that real quick because I saw that, and that's the brand I think that you have for your speaking arrangements that you do. And is the Bolognese philosophy something you started, or is that something you picked up somewhere?
Yeah, I started it. So it's all based on a personal story about I was working at the agency, and I almost unknowingly missed the last meal with my late husband, which was his home-cooked Bolognese. We lost him in an accident the following day. And the story is about how I almost missed it, but there was just something in my gut that told me to get home, to get home at 6 o'clock on that night in particular. And then like where my lessons and learning has evolved since then on looking after each other, protecting each other's time. When you're making a timeline, when you're making a timeline on a big project, like where is the humanity in that timeline? How are you getting people home to be with their families and doing things that keep them healthy? So that is it's an outcome from my entire experience. It's my biggest life lesson. I talk to agencies and do speaking with them often for their teams just to help reset if things are going a little sideways, or just to enhance the amazing wellness programs that they already have. But yeah, that's such a
big thing in creative. Like I was in the acting and filmmaking world before moving into the more business side of creative, and like when we were doing indie film, like my first sales job, that's all I was trying to do was fund student films and indie films. So like I was still paying $500 a month, sharing a room and living on a college lifestyle and taking all my commissions and just funding these movies. But back then nothing was union, right? Like there weren't any rules or guidelines. So like we would be on set for like 16, 18-hour days, and like it's a lot. Like people are passionate and they want to create stuff and they want to create good stuff. So they do it, and they also want to make it in the industry, and they want to develop that reputation for grinding. But you do that 5 more years, 10 more years, and especially in an industry where a lot of folks want to underpay for everything if they can, like it can take a toll on you. It's important to kind of remember to take care of yourself too, and be able to have that balance. Do you have any advice for how to kind of strike that balance, or how to think about trying to still be ambitious and get after it while kind of taking care of yourself?
Yeah. And because I love to be working, and so I am constantly relearning the lessons and reframing my way because of what I went through as well. So one of the number one things you can do is know your own non-negotiables. Like, what are the things? And I ask this question to some people, and they don't know. And I say, well, this is a good point. Let's sit down and have a chat about it. Like, what are the things that you feel really make your life start falling apart, or going, pushing yourself towards the edge when they're not in your life? When you let the work take over some of the things that make you feel whole and rested. And nourished, what are those things? Because you need them in your life. You need them in your life to be a good creative. You start stripping out those, a lot of the love and humanity and connection in your ideas starts going. Like, these things are all related. This is how you learn about humans, by resting and being with them. So you can write incredible stories and take them on amazing experiences. If that's all stripped out of your life, then we all suffer, because the creativity isn't the same. So what are your non-negotiables? I have a few. Sleeping is massive for me. If I don't get a certain amount of sleep, my world starts falling apart. I need to be outside. I need to have time with my friends and my family, and I know when that's starting to be taken over and it's not good. But yeah, do you know what your non-negotiables are?
Yeah, I love that. It's I like the term non-negotiable, because it kind of combines two concepts that me and my housemate talk about a lot. So one of those concepts is like, know your core values. Like, what are your foundations? And that's, I dove really deep into Stoicism for a while with like Marcus Aurelius, and I listened to Ryan Holiday's work in the Daily Stoic and the stuff he does with his podcasts and his books. And those core values, like for most humans, come down to similar things like sleep, cleanliness, physical exercise, mental clarity. Like, what are those high level things? And then the non-negotiable part is a big thing. Me and my housemate are big basketball fans. Like, Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality is a big thing that we talk about, and this idea of don't negotiate with yourself, because that's how you start to become insecure and lose confidence, is if you're not following through on what you promise yourself. Well, then how can you expect to have any confidence in yourself if you're letting yourself down all the time? So something I've been doing is every night I kind of take my journal out and I'll make a promise to myself for my first 90 minutes the next day. And basically I'll just write good morning at the top, and then I'll break down like, what are you doing to clean? What are you doing to get some movement in? What are you doing to get nutrients in? Like, what's this checklist of stuff that you're promising you're going to do? And then I come up the first morning, I drink a cup of water, and I look at my notebook and it says good morning, and here's all the stuff that you got to do. And that has helped me not just stay mentally clear, but it's helped me be more productive. Because by the time I get through that list, it's so much easier to lean into the calls I have today and the meetings that I've got to jump into and the work that I've got to do. And I already feel so much more accomplished by the end of those short little easy wins. Like stuff as simple as take a shower, brush your teeth, like little basic things, like feed the dog, do a little give of taking care of her, right?
Yeah.
Like those basic things can make a big difference on your mood. And so I think we're very aligned on this idea of like, know the things you have to get done, know those non-negotiables. I love that.
Yeah. And even drinking water. I mean, we're all terrible at that. I think 99% of my family and friends right now are chronically dehydrated. Drink some water now.
I know, it's so funny because it's become almost like a meme of like the thought leader saying like, drink more water, go on more walks. And it's like, yeah, it's true. It gets old hearing it all the time. Like I get that. But at the same time, none of us do it enough. It is something that helps. Like those basic fundamentals really make you feel better. It makes a big impact.
Really does. Yeah.
This is awesome. Thank you for getting a little vulnerable here for a second and kind of talking more on the mental clarity, because I think that's another under talked about thing, especially in emerging technologies, because I think we're all so excited about it. Like all of us want it to work. Like we want to try and experiment, and there's so many things that aren't going to work in the next 3 years, so we kind of have to just hammer things into walls, and some of it's not going to break through and other things will. And so I think everybody gets overworked very quickly because you want to you want to try more things. Kind of pivoting back into talking about the XR world, the other thing I want to get your take on in the last few minutes here is the Vision Pro. So Vision Pro has obviously been the talk of the town. The last 10 years, we've all been waiting for Apple to get involved and do something. What are your initial thoughts after seeing the announcement? And have you made any plans to maybe try one out? I know they're starting to open that door up a little bit.
Yeah. I have a friend who had access to one early, so looking to kind of scoot to his place to try it. I was really excited about this launch because the industry needs this type of competition. I think it's really important, and because it's Apple, like everything that they released is considered and thought through, and they don't just react to trends; they really think it through. So I think they did some really clever things that are different from what I've learned from my time at Meta. They cleverly, truly integrated it into the ecosystem, and I think that's something that I haven't seen done at that level before. Apple is Apple TV. It's all about content. There's this beautiful straight line into immersive video and entertainment, which makes a ton of sense for me. When I look at Horizon Worlds, and I still do a lot of work in that space, and I've learned a lot from working on that product, but it was also felt quite fragmented from that Meta ecosystem, if that makes sense. Whereas you look at the Apple approach and it's like, oh, there's the direct line. There are some utility things that I kind of got quite excited about, like the battery not being in the headset, because there's something that truly does bother me about it strapped to my head. Like, as a human being, I'm like, So I love the fact that the battery is separate, because it removes the weight, and weight on your head from a pure posture point of view. I know that things will get smaller and better and lighter. Like, it already has gone in huge leaps and bounds. They were two really good things. I'm excited to see what are the few big partnerships that they come out with. I think that's going to be really interesting, and the quality of work the fidelity will be incredible. So I can see a lot of brands wanting to go there for that level of fidelity and VR entertainment area as well. I am interested to watch the uptake based on the price point. I know that that's a huge talking factor. I'm glad they've come out with what they're doing. I do understand that the price point is reflective in a different way on what you may spend on other things, and I think that's a quite interesting thing to talk about. So their lean into work spaces, and I'm hearing some of my friends who are quantifying the amount that they're spending, not on comparison to other headsets, but on comparison to what they may spend on a laptop. And that's a game changer. You know, when you have got people negotiating that from a financial point of view of where they see the value, that's pretty important. Yeah.
I totally agree. That I think that because when my buddy works at Apple and was telling me like with the because he got to try one, and he was like, the second I started using it, I realized how easy it would be to just do all my work on this every day. And that's the first time I've ever heard so many consistent people I know that have tried it or watched videos of that have tried it saying things like that about a headset. I think Oculus and the Quest line of headsets is great. Yeah. I actually don't think they're directly competitive in a lot of ways. I think that the Quest is going to open up a lot of doors for gaming and for other use cases and keep the price point down to make it accessible. Important.
Yeah.
Which is super important.
Yeah.
And I think that their group of developers is going to build a totally different set of things for it based on that.
Yeah.
But this is the first time I've ever heard people literally go, oh, I could just picture myself working on it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. If you could build any app for the Vision Pro, like if you had the time and the funding, what would you start with?
For the Vision Pro, it's not Vision Pro, but I really do think the Avastar identity blockchain idea.
Yeah, yeah. If you could build
I know
something.
I'm pivoting on you.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But I can see incredible content being made on Apple, but I naturally go to where is the humanity space and the technology space, and how can we bring that together? There is one thing I would love to share with you, and that I have a friend who's built out this piece of blockchain which could have worked. Okay, here we go. This could have worked for Apple Pro. I'm going to flip it on you. He has made, and I sat with him for hours, and I was just like, I think it's changed my life. He has made this piece of blockchain called Dreamcatcher. He's this incredible brain called Tom Thompson. He's a Kiwi. And what it does, it brings full equality and transparency around product innovation. So the best way to explain it is, let's say we're making Apple Vision Pro, and it's a product. Along the whole development of that product is made and captured and verified as work packages that sit on this blockchain. So all the individuals that have contributed, like truly contributed to building that there may have been some people in completely different countries that worked on the UX. There may have been completely from other side of the world who worked on some of the hardware. Like all of that is plugged in, and as it goes along, the product launches. And the way this blockchain is set up, this is incredible, is that when that product starts selling, all the revenue that comes back is immediately fed back to all the people that completed all the work on it.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's almost like a way to distribute, like it's almost like if like employees get equity in a business, and if the business exits, then there's this split of kind of liquidity back to the people in the pool of ownership of the company.
Yeah.
But this is allowing you to do that as like a revenue share for almost like an open source product, where you could have people all over distributed building, collaborating, and then taking a piece of the revenue as it comes in. That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's a very cool idea.
I just think that there's so much value in that for supporting people's lives globally, for full transparency. Yeah, to your point, it's just like this Uber of innovation, open source, and I think companies should take that on and experiment with that.
That's really big for, well, so like all or not, I mean, I don't know about all, but most business is moving to remote work, right? And like moving to this distributed workforce. It's amazing because you don't have the same geographic limitations, language barrier issues as we did before. It's a lot more accessible now to work with people all over the world. But especially when it comes to Web3 technologies and even with metaverse and AI, this idea of distributed workforces, of decentralization, is a really, really big topic, right? That's at the core of this movement into the blockchain. And so the idea of being able to provide a model that gives transparency into who's working on something, the credit that they get for it, the revenue that they get back for it, it's very in line with what people are doing with like DAOs and things like that. Very, very cool idea. I'd be interested to look. What was it called again?
Dreamcatcher.
Dreamcatcher.
Yeah, I sent it to you. We can post it for the team. He's been working on it for years. He's the most incredible brain. I would love people to just be having a go with using it on something that they're innovating with. I think it just stirred up a lot in me as a human being of how to be using technology in this space.
I think anything that helps drive better revenue for those type of business models is really valuable, because the other issue, and we don't have enough time to dive too deep into it, but the idea of implicit bias is huge, right? Like even in Web 2, we've talked about this a lot in the last few years, where when you code something, you're coding your bias into the code, whether you want to or not. When you're creating processes, you're developing biases, whether you want to or not. And with something like the metaverse and AI, this cutting edge technology, it is very expensive to get this off the ground and get it started, which creates a huge barrier for who is creating the foundational processes. And that creates a wall. So like in the States, for example, it's a much bigger investment here than it is in parts of Africa. But in Africa, they've got different problems. I was on a panel with someone at Gatherverse, and I'm going to put her name in the description because I'm not thinking of it right now. And I think this is the second time I've forgotten her name while quoting her. But she was talking a lot about how they don't have as many desktops. It's all mobile phones. And so that's a different kind of way of engaging with these platforms. There's different problems for that hardware than a headset or a desktop. And then similarly, they have a younger population with huge traffic issues to get into major cities. And so they have a large group of people that can benefit from these technologies and that are interested in them, but their needs for that technology are different than our needs. And so finding a way to distribute and get them more involved in the building process, finding ways to help them monetize that, I think tools like this kind of help take us in a step in that direction to remove those biases and have it be more inclusive. Yeah. I know we're a few minutes over, but I want to give you a quick opportunity to plug anything you're working on. Where can people find you, learn more about Verses and Valleys? I'll let you kind of talk through that, and we'll throw it in the description as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so versesandvalleys.com is where you can find us. We are open for season 2. You'll see a few things on that site. We also reach out to us if you would like a full background of everyone on the council. We have that all in depth as well, so you can see everyone's experience. But we are open, and we would love to chat to anyone. Also, for anyone who is just needing a little bit of a reset, as you touched on, bolognesephilosophy.com, you'll see in there, the video and the message that I do public speaking on, and support businesses on it as well. So please head there. Thank you for having me. It's been an awesome chat. I feel like there's so many things we could just keep talking about.
Oh yeah, I could talk to you for 10 hours, guys. This has been awesome. That's the pod.
Awesome.